Hungarian Folk Tales. The Golden Lamb. Once upon a time, there lived a poor man and his son. When the boy grew up, his father sent him away to work and earn some money. Off he went and searched for a place where he could work until he finally found a farmer who hired him as a shepherd for his sheep. The next day, his new master handed him a flute and sent him out with a flock to see if he knew what to do. Unlike the other lazy shepherds, the young lad never rested for a minute and herded the sheep and played the flute all day long. Among the sheep was a lamb with a golden fleece. Whenever the young lad played his flute, it began to dance. The boy grew to like the lamb so much, he decided to ask for the golden lamb instead of wages. As night fell, he took the flock home. The farmer stood waiting for him at the gate, and when he saw that none of his precious sheep had gone astray and all had eaten well, he was a happy man indeed. The boy and his master began to debate his wages. The lad said he would like the golden lamb. The master liked the little animal very much, but eventually agreed to let the boy have it because he was willing to work very hard. A whole year passed by. The boy worked well for his master and was given the lamb as his prize. He set off home, but it began to get dark just as he walked into a village. The shepherd boy eventually sought shelter with a farmer who had a daughter who fell so in love with the golden lamb that she decided to steal the animal for herself. It was nearly midnight by the time the girl got her hands on the lamb, but as soon as she touched it, her hands stuck to its golden fleece. The boy woke the next morning and saw the young girl with her hands stuck to the lamb. He did not want to leave the lamb behind, so off he set with the lamb and the girl with her hands stuck to its golden fleece. The three of them danced until they reached the third neighbour's house, where a woman poked her head out and saw the young girl dancing and prancing with the lamb. She rushed outside with her oven shovel and shouted, "Get back home with you and stop making such a scene." The woman smacked her with the shovel. "I said to do as you were told." But the girl carried on dancing, so the woman hit her with her shovel, but it stuck to her behind, with the woman on the other end. The lamb pulled them both through the village, all the way to the church. The lamb started to dance with the girl stuck to its fleece, who had the shovel stuck to her behind, and the woman on the end. The priest was just returning from the church and scolded them bitterly for making such a scene, but to no avail. The priest took his stick and struck the woman's behind with it and was surprised to see that his stick stuck to the woman's fat bottom and he was glued to the other end. The boy continued to trail them through the village where a soldier passed with his horse. He touched the priest and got stuck too. Then a weaver came out with a roll of linen. He smacked the horse's flank and the linen stuck to it in an instant. Then a cobbler appeared with his hands full of boots. He hit the weaver and cried, "What are you staring at?" And he too now was stuck to the procession. The boy blew on his flute and the lamb went on dancing with the girl stuck to its behind, the shovel stuck to her bottom, the woman to the handle of the shovel, the stick to her bottom, with the priest stuck to the other end, followed by the soldier leading the horse, with the linen stuck to its flank, the weaver stuck to the linen, with the boots on his back, and the cobbler at the very end. And the boy just went on marching with his peculiar parade until he reached a town where everyone was in mourning. The houses and palaces were all covered in black, and the men and women were walking about in black clothes. At the edge of the town, the boy began talking to an old woman and asked her what had happened. The old woman sadly told him that the daughter of the king was seriously ill, and no medicine was strong enough to cure her. The doctors all said that if someone could make her laugh, she would soon be cured, but no one had managed to do it yet. The king declared that anyone who could make his darling daughter laugh could marry her and receive half of his kingdom as a gift of thanks. Of course, there were many people who all wanted to try their luck, princes, counts, and acrobats, from all kinds of nations and nationalities, but no one succeeded. No matter how hard they tried, the princess never even smiled, and they all ended up with their heads impaled on a pole. The next morning, the boy announced that he intended to make the princess laugh. The king was happy to hear the news and asked his daughter to stand outside. The young shepherd began to play his flute. The golden lamb went on dancing with the girl stuck to its fleece, with the shovel on her behind, and the woman stuck to the shovel, the stick on her fat bottom, with the priest stuck to the other end, followed by the soldier with his horse, with the linen stuck to its flank, the weaver stuck to the linen, with boots on his back, and the cobbler at the end of the line. When the princess saw this, she burst out laughing, and that made the golden lamb so happy that it shook everything and everyone off and began to dance alone. And then the girl began to dance, and then the woman, and then the priest, and then the soldier with his horse, and then the weaver, and even the cobbler. The king happily gave his blessing for the shepherd boy to marry his daughter. He gave the weaver and the cobbler royal warrants. He made the soldier his general and the priest his royal cardinal. The woman was promoted to royal baker, and the girl became the princess's maid. The wedding feast went on for a week and a day, and the whole kingdom celebrated the bride and groom. If the violin strings hadn't snapped, they would all still be dancing. Hungarian Folk Tales. The Magic Lock. Once upon a time, long ago and far away, there lived a poor woman, and she had one son. One day she had to do the washing for someone, and when she got home, she found the place empty. Where could her son have gone? Where could he be? No one could tell her. If only she had known that devils had taken him away. They had carried him off to hell to set him to work for them. When the boy had spent 7 years with them, they assigned him 7 rooms. He had to do everything: sweep them, clean them, dust them up, anything and everything he had to do. Now in the 7th room there was a lock, a magic lock, and in that lock lived 12 devils. He worked and worked on that lock until he eventually stole it. He escaped from those devils and went straight off home to his mother. Now what did he say to his mother? He said, "Mother, go to the king and ask him for his daughter's hand, for I would like to take her as my wife." Off went his mother to the king and asked for his daughter as a bride for her son. The king roared with laughter at the idea of such a lad wanting his daughter in marriage, so he said, "Listen, my dear, I'll give my daughter to your son if during the night he can root up and destroy the forest that surrounds the village. Make it disappear without a trace. That's the only way my daughter will ever be his bride." So the poor woman went home and told her son what the king had said. Well, all the son had to say was, "If that's all that's needed, that's how it will be." When evening fell, he turned the key in the lock, and right away there were 12 devils in front of him. "Off you go, level that forest by morning, so roots and all have gone and nothing remains, not even a fallen acorn." And the devils set to work. Next morning there wasn't a sign or trace of the forest, even the roots had all been pulled up. The lad went to the king to report the task was done, and he had come to claim his daughter. "You can have her if by morning there stands in the forest place a fine field of green corn. Now that was no bother to the lad at all. He had his magic lock which helped him to do it all, and by the morning, in place of the forest, there was a fine field of bright green corn. Again the lad went to the king and said, "Your Majesty, I have done what you asked." The king looked out and saw the fine corn, but all he said was, "Well, indeed, you've done all your tasks. I'll give you one more. By morning, lay out a road in front of my palace that is paved with diamonds, with trees at its sides, and the trees full of birds. If you succeed in this task, then my daughter shall be yours." The lad went home and in the evening turned the key in the lock, and in the morning in front of the king's palace sparkled a diamond road with flowering trees and the trees full of birds. The king looked out and was almost blinded by the glittering brightness and the beauty of the trees. He couldn't believe his eyes. For that, it was worth giving his daughter's hand. And so it passed. On the following morning, there above the meadow hung a palace from a golden chain, and beautiful it was too. And that is where they lived. One day he went hunting, but he didn't take the lock with him and left it with his wife. She didn't know the value of the rusty old lock because her husband hadn't told her. Now the devils had a companion, and she was an ugly old witch. She happened to come by the palace, crying, "New locks for old, new locks for old." The king's daughter heard her and was delighted, so she called out that she had one. Now that's just what the old witch wanted. Out she took from her pocket a new lock and exchanged it for the magic lock. Now the palace hanging from the golden chain immediately turned into a tumble-down old shack. The princess cried and cried, but she couldn't imagine how it had happened. When her husband came back, he almost fell over when he saw the tumble-down shack standing where his fine palace should be. His wife wept and told him how she had exchanged the lock for a new one from the old woman. Her husband was consumed by sorrow when he heard this. But he pulled himself together, went to the king, and told him the full and short of it. "Off you go to Mother Moon, who is all of 100 years old, and perhaps she will put things right." Off the lad went to see Mother Moon, who was all of 100 years old. But Mother Moon couldn't do anything about it. She just gave him a dog and sent him to Mother Sun, who was all of 200 years old. Off he went to her, but she just gave him a mouse and sent him on to Mother Wind, who was all of 300 years old. He told her why he had come, and she gave him a cat, and told him that there on an island in the middle of the deep blue sea lived an old witch, and it was she who had the lock. Wasn't he the happiest man there was? He did what he was told and went off to where Mother Wind told him to go. His way to the island wasn't easy, what with the mouse and the cat and the dog, but once they were there, it took the three animals no time at all to bring him the lock. When they got home, the young husband of the king's daughter turned the key in the lock, and straight away the palace was hanging there in its old place from a golden chain. The young pair were so happy, and they lived happily ever after. Hungarian Folk Tales. The Prince Who Turned into Stone. Once upon a time, there lived an old king who had two fine sons. One day they stood before their father, and they said it was time for them to go and see the world and the seven seas. The old king was sad, but as there was nothing he could do, he filled their pockets with gold and bade them farewell. The boys said goodbye and off they went. They kept walking for a long time until they finally reached a strange new town. When they arrived, the people of the town were having a fair. They were selling beautiful bouquets of flowers, and each prince bought one for himself. They tied a red ribbon around one and a green around the other, and they went on their way. Suddenly they came upon a man with a huge beard. "Which way are you going, old man?" "I would like to sell these animals here," he said, "if only there was someone to buy them." The two princes felt very sorry for the old man, and since they liked the animals anyway, they finally bought them. And so they kept marching forward until they came to a fork in the road. Finally, the younger one said, "It's your turn to choose, brother. I will take the black road." "All right, but let me tell you what. See this walnut tree by the roadside? Let's both tie our bouquets on a branch. When one of us gets back here and sees that the flowers of the other one have wilted and withered, he should know that his brother is dead." They did so and went their separate ways. The older brother kept going until he arrived in a town. The place was all covered in black drapes. The prince went into an inn and asked the innkeeper why they were in mourning. The innkeeper explained that there was a foreign knight who said that the king should give him the country and his daughter unless he was defeated by one of the king's men. Many young warriors responded to the challenge, but they were all slain, including the two sons of the king. Our prince challenged the foreign knight the next morning, and he was so quick and clever with a sword that the foreign knight was killed in an instant. There was celebration and joy in the town. The king took the prince to his palace and promised him the hand of his daughter, plus the country, once he died. And they lived happily without a care in the world. One day the king said, "I would love to eat some wild boar." "I'll be happy to get you some if that's what you want." The prince mounted his horse and rode out to the forest, taking the animals with him. He was busy trying to find a wild boar, but finally night fell. He settled down and made a fire to keep himself warm. Suddenly he heard a voice calling from the tree above. "I'm cold. I'm freezing." "If you're so cold, why don't you come down? I have a fire burning down here. This should warm you up." As he looked up, he spotted an incredibly old woman among the branches. "I would never dare to descend. I'm frightened of the beasts," she croaked. "I will throw down a twig, hit all of them with it, then I know they won't hurt me anymore." The prince did as he was told, and all of a sudden, all three animals turned into stone. The old hag jumped down from the tree, seized the twig from the young man, and hit him too. The prince immediately turned to stone himself. They were all waiting for the prince to return home, but it was in vain. 1 month went by, and during that time the younger prince visited the town of Joy and returned to the large walnut tree. He saw that his brother's bouquet was wilted and dry. He walked down the road until he got to the town. He found the same inn that his brother visited before him. The innkeeper was very happy to see him. "Thank heavens, the prince is back." "Hey, good man, I'm not the one I seem to be," said the younger prince. "The man before me was probably my brother. I am trying to find him myself." When he spoke to the old king, he told him that his beloved son-in-law went to the forest and no one had seen him since. "I shall not rest until I find him," said the younger prince. Finally, he himself was lost just like his brother. When darkness fell, he lit a fire to keep himself warm, and his animals also stretched out for a rest. Suddenly, he heard a wailing from above his head. "I am cold. I am freezing." "If you're so cold, why don't you come down?" he said. "I have a fire burning down here. This should warm you up." "But I'm afraid of the beasts. I will throw down a twig, hit all three of them with it, and then I'll know they won't hurt me anymore." Maybe this old witch killed his brother. Instead of touching the animals, he only stroked the dirt with a twig. And when the old hag jumped down from the tree, she was attacked by the wild beasts. "What have you done with my brother? Where is he? The large stone behind you is your brother, and the 3 flat ones are the animals. Swish them with the twig, your touch will revive them." The prince did as he was told. His brother told him everything. Finally, he returned to the witch. "Good deeds are rewarded by good in return, but evil deeds shall be punished. Now it is your turn to stone, lest you should harm another soul." The old witch turned into stone and never left the forest again. She is still there to this very day. Where? Somewhere on this side of here and the far side of there, where a little pig snorts the air.